Some stories break you, some heal you. But here at My 90s Love Story, we're here to fill your heart. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Today was Theo's birthday. He told me he was at the tea house he liked to go to, so I hurried over, clutching the gift box in my hand, my palm damp with nervous sweat. Today, I was going to propose to him. When I arrived, the place was already full of people, all of them Theo's friends. He wore a pale robe, a glossy string of prayer beads on his left wrist. The shaved head he'd had before had grown out into short hair now. One of his friends suddenly spoke up. "Theo, I hear your family is dying to get you married off. You and Ellie about to give us some good news?" I gripped the gift box, my heart pounding. Then I heard Theo say, "I won't be marrying her." He took a sip of tea, lowered his head, and said it plainly. "My master told me she's the calamity of my life, but 3 years with her is more than enough. I hear she means to propose to me today. Why don't you all do me a favor and help deliver her from this life? The only reason I left the monastery at all was for Mel." In that instant, my mind went suddenly clear, as if all the noise around me had simply switched itself off. Someone crowed, "See, I told you. Theo could never forget his one true love." Someone glanced my way. Without thinking, I ducked behind the wall. I stood there in a daze, not daring to blink until my eyes went dry and the tears welled up on their own. And then I saw a lovely figure flutter past me like a butterfly and rush into the room, straight into Theo's arms. Mel. So Theo's one great love, the girl he'd carried for 10 years, was Melody Fairchild. Theo hated being touched. Even the maids never dared lay a careless hand on his clothes or his body. And I had never dared either. But now I stood there quietly and watched the look on his face and the way he moved. He caught Mel by the waist, seemed to want to push her away, but she only clung tighter, and he wasn't the least bit angry. He just smiled and said, "How are you still so careless? Be more careful." At last, I understood. He wasn't cold-blooded. His heart had simply belonged to someone else all along, and it had never once changed. Well, I'm Ellie, and if I can love a man, I can let him go too. After all, from the very beginning, I'd only been hired to make Theo leave the monastery. Theo was the resident holy man of the capital's high society, famous as a proud, untouchable flower. Handsome, rich, but after he graduated from college, he'd walked into a nameless little temple in the capital, shaved his head, and become a monk. Later, his grandmother threatened to kill herself unless he came back to inherit the family fortune, so he'd left the temple and returned to run the company. Even so, he refused to give up his robes for good. That was when old Mrs. Ashford came to me. She handed me 30 million, 10 million of it up front, and said that if I could get Theo to return to secular life, the remaining 20 million would land in my account that very same day. From the first time I met him, I knew he was a proud flower, hard to pluck. But the thing I love most in this world is the challenge of a conquest. I threw myself into it, trying every way I could think of to get close to him. My clumsy little efforts were usually caught out, and he kept dodging me. And then I'd have to sweetly coax him again, just to get a little closer for a little longer. Then he learned where my home was, learned my birthday, and he changed. He quietly let me draw near. He quietly let me cross the lines. I actually believed I was someone special to him. Even old Mrs. Ashford believed we'd soon have happy news. Looking back now, from the very start, it had only ever been me, loving all on my own. My phone chimed. A text from Auntie. "Ellie, thanks to you, Theo doesn't think about becoming a monk anymore. How did the proposal go? If it works out, register the marriage next month, hold the wedding the month after, and have a baby next year." Auntie was so kind. She never once acted like she was above me, and she was one of the few people who truly hoped Theo and I would end up together. I stared at the screen for a moment, then wrote back, Auntie, I'm not going to propose to him after all. I'm giving up the job of my own free will. I don't need the rest of the money. Theo still didn't know I'd come. I could hear Mel's coquettish voice drifting out of the private room. I sent Theo a text. Let's break up. Inside the room, Theo's phone buzzed. He picked it up, his eyes flicking across the screen. Someone beside him asked what it was, and he answered without a flicker. Nothing, just a trivial matter. I laughed at myself under my breath. 3 years, traded for 2 little words. A trivial matter. At least I had 10 million to console me. I deleted every trace of him from my phone, turned, and walked away. I'd lived in the Ashford house for 3 years. Now that Theo and I were finished, naturally, I had to pack up my things and go. As I was wheeling my suitcase out of the building, I saw a figure that caught me off guard. Ahead of me stood Theo's older cousin, Roman. He was dressed in ordinary clothes, a lazy sort of ease hanging off him, his eyes so cold, no one dared come near. I was a little afraid of him. Auntie had once told me, in the capital, you can offend anyone you like, but never Roman. I lowered my head, pretended I hadn't seen him, and pushed my suitcase to slip past. A hand shot out and closed around my wrist. Knowing there was no getting away, I greeted him obediently. "Hello, cousin." He stared at me and let out a low mocking laugh. "Broken up already and still calling me cousin?" Startled, I lifted my head and ran straight into his dark, dark eyes. "How do you know we broke up?" He reached out and wiped a drop from the corner of my eye with his thumb. I turned my head away to avoid his hand, and he frowned. "Crying?" "No, just tired." "The useless little thing is quite useful after all. You earned 10 million, didn't you? If you want revenge, I can help you." He smiled faintly and went on, slow and unhurried. "Come to bed with me, and everything I have is yours. If you want to take your revenge with your own 2 hands, you can use anything of mine you like." His smile was more frightening than his stony face. Come to bed with him? Would I even live long enough to spend the 10 million? Still, I couldn't help looking at him, my eyes wide and innocent and full of doubt. "But I don't want revenge. I've already earned 10 million. The job market is brutal these days. I've been slaving away since the dawn of time just to scrape together this much. Earning this 10 million is a blessing on 3 generations of my family. As for Theo, if he wants to chase after his one true love, let him. If he wants to keep a caged canary, let him. None of it has anything to do with me anymore." But then I caught the look on Roman's face going even darker, and I remembered Auntie's warning, and a cold sweat broke out all over me. My feet froze in place. I was still trying to think of a way to slip off when I heard him ask, 10 million is enough to date you? Then I'll give you 50 million. Let's give it a try." I was speechless. I'm not the kind of woman whose eyes light up at the sight of money. 1 year, I agreed. My leaving didn't seem to touch Theo at all. He didn't go back to the temple. The next time I saw him was a month later, at Ashford Corporation's press event for its new product launch. Mel stood at his side, and anyone with sharp eyes could see the woman had been swapped out. A reporter asked at once where I had gone. Faced with a question he clearly didn't want to answer, Theo could easily have refused, or steered it somewhere else. Instead, he said, cold as anything, "Just an unimportant person. Please don't bring up irrelevant people at a press event like this." I quietly touched the bank card in my pocket, and every bit of resentment melted away on the spot. Suddenly my phone rang. Roman. When he'd taken me away, he'd paid me a handsome salary to love him. But after dropping me off at home, he'd stopped showing up, only sending me a few messages now and then. I didn't take it to heart. After all, he'd given me so much money. "Where are you?" I answered obediently. "At home." The other end of the line went quiet for a long moment. I could even hear him breathing heavily. He repeated the word, home, and then laughed. "Come to a party with me tonight. My people will come pick you up." Roman's people arrived quickly. They took me to choose an outfit, so many I couldn't see straight. I just reached for a cute little dress when the stylist plucked it out of my hand. She propped her chin in her palm and looked me up and down, appraising, then handed me a slinky, elegant dress instead. Your face is the cold, aloof type. That cute style doesn't suit you. Wear this one. The makeup artist built me a one-of-a-kind look to match the dress. Even as I was bundled into the car, I still hadn't quite come back to myself. Roman had said I'd be going to the party with him, but the man himself still hadn't arrived. I wandered a full circle around the party and ate my fill, and Roman still hadn't come. The moment I turned around, I saw Mel holding a glass of red wine, her eyes fixed on my dress. Her friend was speaking loudly enough that I could hear every word, even across the gap between us. Isn't that young Master Ashford's little tag-along? Not long ago, he came right out and called her an unimportant person, and she still has the nerve to show up here. Their eyes swung toward me all at once. Someone gasped, "That dress! Isn't that the one Mel couldn't even buy? The design alone took 3 years and another year of handwork on top of that. It's priceless. There's only one in the whole world. How could she possibly afford it?" Then someone else murmured, "She really is beautiful, like a star off the television." Everyone looked at her, and she clamped her mouth shut. I glanced down. So this dress was that expensive. Mel gripped her glass, her eyes going dark, and suddenly walked over to me. She smiled at me, warm and friendly. "Ellie, you were invited too? Theo's been so busy lately, but last night he still sent someone to bring me an invitation, and he picked out my dress himself." Her friend jumped in to flatter her at once. "Mel, Theo is so good to you." I pretended to nod along. "But that dress doesn't really suit you. Does Theo actually care about you? If he did, why wouldn't he make sure you were properly done up before a grand party like this?" Mel's face turned awful. Without thinking, she raised a hand to cover her cheek, and when she saw my makeup, her eyes brimmed with envy. Her friends rushed to comfort her with hollow little lines like, "You're beautiful even without makeup." But who would believe that? Mel really did go without makeup, because Theo hated cosmetics, and she didn't want to be the thing he disliked. When I'd been at his side, I too had always dressed plainly and kept my face bare. The party was dull. I turned to go to the restroom, thinking that if Roman still hadn't shown up by the time I came out, I'd just go home. But when I came out, Mel was already standing there waiting. She pretended to ask, "Ellie, are you angry? Aren't we best friends? What you said just now was really too much." She was right. She'd been my best friend all through college. But after my car accident right out of graduation, she'd vanished from the face of the earth until a month ago, when I saw her in that private room and finally learned that she was Theo's one true love. We weren't friends anymore. I turned to leave, and she hurriedly caught my arm. "The person standing at the door of the private room that day, was that you? I was in such a rush, I only saw Theo. He didn't mean to ignore you. If you're angry, then blame me." She bit down on her lip, her eyes reddening, her face full of guilt and hurt, all forbearance and innocence. I clenched my fist, and before I could say a word, a group of people suddenly rounded the corner of the hallway. The man in front was terribly familiar to me, tall and straight as a pine and proud. Theo. He walked right past me to Mel's side and gently smoothed her hair, a tenderness so strange to see. "You did nothing wrong. You don't need to apologize. She and I have no relationship anyway." His cold eyes swept over me and paused for just a moment. "How crude," he said flatly. I waved a hand. "Thanks. Thank you so much." Behind him was the whole crowd from the private room that day. One of them muttered under his breath, "Ah, Ellie, so you were there that day too? We were just talking in the private room. You didn't happen to hear anything, did you?" I didn't shy from their eyes. I looked right at them. "I heard. Both my ears heard it very clearly. You said I wasn't as good as Theo's one true love. You said you'd never liked me. You said, "Congratulations, Theo, for making it across the fire pit." I pointed at each of them in turn, and to each one I repeated the words they'd said. I have exactly one strength, and that's a long memory, and exactly one flaw, and that's a small, petty, grudge-keeping heart. A few of them looked distinctly uncomfortable. Theo's eyes seemed to rest on my face a long while. Mel deliberately hugged his arm and put on a show of sulking. It's all my fault. If I'd seen Ellie standing outside the door and pulled her in, maybe she wouldn't have taken offense and left without coming back. I just never imagined the one eavesdropping outside the door was Ellie. And sure enough, the moment she finished, Theo's eyes turned cold on me. Ellie, I don't recall inviting you here. I won't allow you to bully Mel. Security, see her out. His voice really was ice. I stared at him blankly, and in that instant, every feeling I'd had a moment before scattered like smoke. He wasn't worth it. Then a cold voice rang out from behind me. I invited her. Who gave you the nerve to bully her while I wasn't here? Every eye in the room turned to the man who had just arrived. Roman, smiling a smile that wasn't quite a smile, giving off a danger that was hard to put into words. Since when does whoever I invite need your permission, cousin? In this whole capital, who dares demand that I ask leave of anyone? The room went silent. A few people tried to smooth things over, apologizing again and again, but Roman didn't accept it. What good are other people's apologies? The one who bullied Ellie is your cousin, isn't he? Theo's eyes brushed past my face without stopping. He answered indifferently, My apologies, I was out of line. When it came to things he didn't care about, he was always this cool. Roman walked over to me and held out his hand, right there in front of everyone. I laid my hand in his. The whole room was stunned by the sight. Theo, your lover's been stolen? Theo stared hard at our fingers laced together. So, in the end, you still didn't listen to me. 3 years at his side. Of course I understood what he meant. I said it on purpose. Dangerous. Don't you see it? You're the one who looks dangerous here. I hugged Roman's arm tight and gave the muscle a little squeeze. Firm, powerful. Look at you. Can you even compare to him? Next to him, you're a 1 to his 9. You're the 1. He's the 9. Seeing Roman looking a touch put out, I added, 1 punch from him and you'd be grinning down in the afterlife, you boiled chicken. Roman finally cracked and laughed out loud. A boiled chicken needs a lot more training, or one day he won't even be able to carry his little girlfriend. Mel flushed red. By now, no one dared provoke Roman. A few people hurried to apologize and led Theo away. Roman didn't like noisy places, and he didn't like going to parties. I was still standing there in a daze when I heard him pay me a compliment. He ruffled my hair. Very pretty. Thank you. I'm rarely praised, so I got shy and tried to pull my hand back, but he gripped it and set it back on his arm. Hold on tight. I'm giving you the chance to hit back, so don't be so foolish. I know you love good food and lively crowds, so I brought you here. I had business and came late, and you didn't so much as ask after me once. You were bullied and didn't say a single word to me. Why did it feel so much like a little kid throwing a fit for candy? Then, next time, all right? This time when I went home, Roman didn't leave. Instead, he followed me inside. But once we were in, my silence and my faraway look made him misread me. Do you still have feelings for him? Roman slowly stroked my face, his fingertips warm, his palm rough with a few thin calluses that scratched and made my cheek itch. He paused, then let go and gave a dry laugh. As fragile as this, and somehow you lasted 3 years next to that damn bald monk. Getting scolded like that must have been hard on you. Lucky it wasn't me on the receiving end. I heard you gave him a gift to make the relationship official, and even an anniversary gift too. I nodded. I want one too. I helped you, so can I ask for a gift? He looked wounded and let out a sigh. There's an old saying, you only ever hear the new love laughing, never the old love crying, as if failing to give him a gift were a monstrous crime. Fine. I hurried off to the bedroom and turned the closet upside down until I found the gift box I'd never gotten to give away, then trotted back out to the living room and handed it to him. A gift to make it official. Roman was in a much better mood. He opened the box and found a string of prayer beads inside. Just this one plain little string of prayer beads? His eyes went dark and narrowed, dangerous. Then he turned his head and saw my eyes gone red, looking like I was about to cry. He softened at once, coaxing. Don't cry. I'll wear it, all right? I'm not crying, I'm just grieving the money. This was the gift I bought for Theo's birthday when I meant to propose to him. I shopped all over to find it. It's not that I still have feelings for Theo. It's that it was expensive. Several $100,000. Only a spendthrift throws money away. Afraid I wouldn't believe him, he quickly took out the beads and slipped them on. The sandalwood string, wrapped around his long, slender wrist, gave off an alluring ascetic sort of charm. Good grief. My eyes only went redder. I'd thought he wouldn't like it and wouldn't take it. Who could have guessed that once it was given, there'd be no taking it back? The Ashford family threw a family party. Only the younger generation attended. Every year there was one like it, mostly so that everyone could get to know one another and lend a hand down the road if something came up. Roman was the last to arrive, and after he sat down and took everyone's greetings, he answered them all with barely a flicker of interest. He'd always been that way, so no one thought much of it. Roman really did love the prayer beads I'd given him. Loved them so much he wouldn't take them off his hand, going out of his way to let people catch sight of them. And sure enough, once they noticed, they steered the conversation to the beads. Roman, have you turned over a new leaf? Roman quirked his lip. Bad temper. Needs to be tamed. At that, Theo went slightly still, and his gaze suddenly landed on the familiar beads around Roman's wrist. Then someone exclaimed in surprise, Wait, that's not right. I've seen that string of beads before. Last time I watched Ellie go to a lot of trouble to buy them. I think she meant to use them to propose to Theo. Before the words were even out, two sharp gazes shot toward the speaker, and he fell silent at once. Roman looked calmly at Theo, his eyes cold and dark, as if turning to the edge of a blade. In the end, he only gave Theo a single glance and let it go. His phone rang. When he saw the name on the screen, his eyes went gentle, and the people around him gaped in astonishment. On the other end came a familiar sweet voice. Roman, when are you finally coming home? I've been waiting for you so long. Just hearing her voice, Roman's heart seemed to melt. Home. That was their home, and he loved hearing her say the word. I'll be right there. I'll pick up the cake from your favorite shop. He stood, straightened his collar, and picked up his coat. Sorry, everyone. My girlfriend's a demanding one. He looked at Theo on purpose. I hear my cousin has a new girlfriend. What's the matter? Doesn't the new girlfriend like you? Why don't you care about her at all? He said it to needle him, then left, leaving only Theo behind, his eyes deep and dark, clutching the prayer beads to steady his heart, and yet unable to steady it at all. A few days later, I came home late from dinner with friends. It was well into the night, and under my building I saw a tall, familiar figure. Only when I got close did I realize it was Theo. I made a show of not seeing him, but as I passed by, he seized my wrist, and I heard him demand coldly, Have you had enough of being angry? I flung his hand off and frowned. I'm not angry. Before, I just didn't have a clear sense of my place. I'm a hired hand. I took the deposit and forgot who I was. I warned you, and you wouldn't listen. Truly beyond help. When someone leaves you speechless enough, at a certain point, you just start to laugh. Who needs the lecture of a holy man like you? Right now, you're far worse than you were back when you were my pen pal." His eyes went cold, staring hard at me. All at once, he gripped my chin, his voice frigid. "How do you know about the pen pal?" He always looked at me with that same contempt, gazing down from on high. "You say you're my pen pal? Then where are the letters we exchanged? If you were really that person, you'd have kept the letters with great care." I pressed my lips together. I truly couldn't produce them. The year I graduated college, I was in a car accident, and I asked Mel to go to my place and pack my things for me. But Mel dropped out of contact entirely. After I was discharged and got home, I discovered those letters had vanished into thin air. Back then, in my loneliest hour, I'd been writing letters back and forth with a pen pal, T. We never dug too deeply into each other's lives. All I knew was which city he lived in. After that stack of letters disappeared, I wrote to T, but no reply ever came, and little by little, I let it go. It wasn't until I took Auntie's assignment and got close to Theo that I realized he was T. All I could think about at the time was what expression he'd wear when he found out I was Ellie. But I'd forgotten. He'd moved without a word to anyone, so maybe I was the only one who'd ever cared about that connection at all. Now, at last, I understood the truth. Theo looked at me coldly. "You can't produce them because Mel is my pen pal. Ellie, to have me, you'd stop at nothing. You'd even stoop to stealing someone else's name." I suddenly laughed. No wonder. How else could Mel have suddenly come to know Theo? So it was a cuckoo taking over another bird's nest. What a pity. Theo and I had been pen pals for all those years, and yet he'd claim the letters and refuse to claim the person. I coldly flung his hand off. "If you say it isn't so, then it isn't." I turned to go, and heard Theo's cold voice again. "At Roman's side to spite me. Is that it? You forced me to come see you, so congratulations. You've succeeded. Do you want a kiss or to go to bed? I'll use this body to deliver you, and then we'll call it square. Just never appear in front of me and Mel again." Theo clamped his hand around my chin, gripping so hard I couldn't move at all, his eyes so cold they frightened me, and this was no joke. In a panic, I struck at his hand. "Theo, have you lost your mind?" He didn't explain, and his grip didn't loosen an inch. He bent his head to kiss me, and I slapped him across the face. His head snapped to the side, a red handprint blooming on his cheek. He turned back, his eyes all but breathing fire, and the cuff of his sleeve slid down to reveal the prayer beads underneath, which only made the whole picture more absurd. He grabbed both my hands and lowered his head to kiss me again. I turned my face away, feeling nothing but how ridiculous it all was. I'd known he was cold, but I never dreamed he had a side like this. That afternoon, Roman had told me he'd be home a little late tonight. Pinned to the wall, unable to move, I was just about to drive my knee up into him when a dark shape came tearing in, so fast neither of us could react. Theo was slammed, rolling to the ground. And then the world in front of me went dark, and I fell into a warm embrace, a familiar scent washing over me. I looked up. Roman, his arm locked around me tight. I could feel his body drawn taut as wire, his eyes cold enough to frighten, his breathing heavy. At last, I understood why everyone told me never to provoke him. This was who he really was. But I wasn't afraid. I only felt safe. I patted his back softly and soothed him. "Roman, I'm all right. Don't be afraid. Let's call the police and pay him no mind. Let me take you home." Theo pushed himself up on his hands, and when he saw the two of us press close together, his eyes turned suddenly sharp. The security camera had caught the whole thing. Witnesses and evidence, all of it there. The police came and took us to the station, and after our statements were taken, Theo was held for 5 days. The news reached the Ashford family fast. A noisy crowd of them descended on the police station, some with red eyes, running to apologize to me, and some scolding me. It was just kids messing around. Why blow it up into a police matter? I gave it right back. I was just messing around with him too. Who'd have thought the evidence would be so clear-cut he'd end up locked away? When Mel heard, she came rushing over as well. Even if love has soured into hate, you didn't have to shove Theo into a place like that. Or is it that even now you still haven't given up hope on Theo? I stared her down coldly, and she said nothing. Guilty, not daring to meet my eyes. Whether I've given up or not, what does it matter? At least I don't steal another person's place and pass myself off as her. Though from the looks of it, you were having quite a lovely time. Her face went pale with fright. What are you saying? I don't understand. She couldn't stand still and quickly edged away to keep her distance from me. With the Ashford family's money and pull, Theo was quickly bailed out. But Roman had already taken me home first. He looked at me coldly. Ellie, your eye for people is terrible. You actually liked a man like that. I had no words. A man like that is your cousin? Roman's voice dropped low. I have no real ties to the Ashford family, and none to the Voss family either. I fell silent. Roman had been snatched by traffickers as a small child, made to endure cruel abuse, and then abandoned by his parents, each of whom had gone off and built a family of their own. Somehow, later, he managed to escape, only to collapse partway there. He was lucky a policeman spotted him and brought him back. From then on, his nature turned strange, cold and dark and ruthless, a workaholic without a shred of warmth. No one in the Ashford family dared provoke him, because once he truly lost his temper, he wouldn't spare a thought for his own life. When we first knew each other, in my mind, we were only a hire arrangement, nothing more. But after a long stretch of being around him, I discovered that he actually had a gentle, attentive side. When I dressed plainly and didn't dare wear makeup, he'd buy me a whole room full of clothes. Stop dressing like an old woman. Lose weight for what? You're not fat. Anyone who bullies you, you hit them right back. I'm behind you. From now on, don't swallow your pride for the sake of money. Not even for me. After that, Theo stopped appearing in front of me. Roman seemed afraid the whole business would haunt me, so he took me traveling. He came along without a single complaint, carrying the bags and hauling the things for me. Blinded by money, I really did forget every last one of my troubles. That night, back at the hotel, Roman stroked my face and said, Ellie, is it the ascetic, quiet type you like? I'm not him. I'm wild, and I talk too much. I disagreed with him privately. That isn't true. You built yourself an image that's the exact opposite of your past. But I'd seen him before, once when he had no idea. Back then, I'd been trailing Theo, and I saw Roman sitting alone in a corner, solitary and cold, plainly neither wild nor talkative, as if an invisible wall stood between him and everyone around him. Seeing I didn't believe him, Roman didn't argue. You should go back to your own room. I clung to him and refused to go. No, I want to watch a movie with you. He was quiet a while and didn't bring up sending me back again. He even laid out pajamas for me and told me to go shower. I obediently did as I was told. Deep in the night, he held my waist tight and would not let go. But I still remembered the movie we hadn't finished, and I tried to crawl up out of bed only for Roman to pull me back. His voice came hoarse as he bent his head and kissed my face. Ellie, I already told you. My mind went blank. Before I could react, he finished, wild, and I talk too much. I was astonished. So everything he'd said back then had been the plain truth. He seemed to read the thought right off my face and press me back down, his voice low and rough and stirring. Ellie, I train all the time. I don't need any of those things to help me. Ellie, look at me. Really look and see how I'm different from Theo. Remember well what I look like. Has he ever once touched you here?" I was mortified and furious both, and I glared at him. He suddenly went still, then smiled and leaned down to kiss me. "You're right, I forgot. He never touched you, but I'm the one who gets to touch you." The prayer beads I'd given him. He'd worn on his hand this whole time, treasuring them like something precious. The beads rubbed against my skin, a little raw, but his fingertips grazing over me left me numb. The phone suddenly rang. I held my breath, my whole body going rigid, and I heard Roman let out a low sound. He glanced at the row of numbers on the screen and abruptly hit answer. Too frightened to make a sound, I stayed quiet. From the other end came Theo's trembling voice. "Ellie, where are you? Why can't I find you anywhere? Did you go to Bayshore? Do you not want to see me ever again?" How did he know about Bayshore? I'd only ever mentioned to my pen pal that someday I wanted to move to the seaside town of Bayshore to live. I said nothing, guessing that he'd probably learn the truth. Then Roman's movements suddenly cut clean through my thoughts. He was clearly smiling, and yet the chill coming off him was extreme. His voice was hoarse. "I'm delivering her to paradise. Weren't you the one who said he wanted to deliver Ellie?" And then we heard a snap, like something being torn apart, and a great many beads went scattering to the floor with a rattling clatter, one after another. He'd actually snapped the string of prayer beads that had never once left his hand. Theo didn't answer him. His voice shaking, he insisted on asking me, "Ellie, don't you love me? Isn't that right?" I only felt disgusted, and I wanted to laugh in his face. "But I'm the calamity of your life, aren't I? How would I ever dare to like you? You're far too crude. I still like Roman better." The words he'd once used to size me up, I now handed back to him one by one. "Mel is your pen pal. Go and live happily with her. The two of you make a fine match." The call ended. Roman smiled and tipped his head to ask me, "How is it that every part of you is soft, and yet you can say things this sharp?" Feeling the shift in him, I suddenly went wide-eyed. "Roman, you're not ascetic, and you don't hold anything back either." He'd teased me until I choked, and I glared at him. How had this turned into me teasing him? But he gave me no chance to speak, only bent his head and got back to what he was doing. And after that, I lay quiet and felt my body watered by that gentle rain. After we got back, Roman was buried in work, so in the evenings he could only have his assistant drive me home first. Roman's assistant even whispered to me on the sly, "It's the strangest thing. Lately President Voss seems, I don't know, off. He loses focus in meetings, and in the office he's smiling to himself. Especially that string of prayer beads. He's always got it on his wrist, cradling it like some priceless treasure. He wants the whole world to see it." My face went red, because that day, he'd warned me out something terrible. After that night, he stayed just like that, glowing all the time. But when I got out of the car, I saw Theo's figure. His whole body was rigid, and he stood staring silently at the entrance. I don't know how long he'd been waiting there. At the sound, he suddenly turned, saw me, and his eyes trembled. He wanted to come closer, but the assistant stepped between us. His eyes were rimmed red. It was rare to see him show weakness like this, and yet my heart didn't stir in the slightest. "Ellie, I never once wanted to hurt you. I only wanted to keep the promise I made all those years ago. Even though Mel said she was my pen pal, I felt she'd changed so much that being with her didn't feel the way it used to. All along I've been moved by you, but reason kept dragging me back to reality. I didn't want to break the promise from back then. I never imagined that you were the Ellie I once knew. Back then I showed up because you said you were dying, but I never forgot you." Back then, his family had met with disaster. His father had an accident and lived for years as a vegetable before he died, and Theo grew quiet and withdrawn, with no taste for other people's company. We'd healed each other, writing letters back and forth for 2 whole years. But then came the time I had my car accident. Before the ambulance had even arrived, I was sure I was dying, so I took a paper and pen and wrote down everything that was happening to me. I told him I hoped that in the next life we could be good friends, and that I hoped I might see him again. The courier had just carried the letter away when the ambulance pulled up. I didn't die. Afterward, I wrote to him, but no reply ever came. I looked at him and said calmly, "I already gave you your chance. Ever since I was a child, I knew I'd grow up to be a woman hopelessly in love. So, from the very beginning, I set myself a rule. I'm only allowed to be a fool 3 times. After 3, no matter how much it aches, I have to turn my back and walk away. And if I can't do that, then I'll end up a housewife with 7 children and not a coin in my pocket holding out my hand to my husband for money. Counting the proposal, that makes exactly 3 times. So I won't be turning back. Not ever. I've cut off all contact with Mel. I told her to return everything of yours. Ellie, don't forget me, all right?" His eyes dimmed, and he drew 2 photographs from his pocket. Pictures of the 2 of us together. "I kept these photos from back before I even knew you were Ellie. I just didn't dare face my own feelings, so I hid them away. I never once thought of destroying them." I reached out and took them, and under his hopeful gaze I tore those photographs to pieces with my own hands, then said softly, "Oh, but I forgot you a long time ago. There's no need to hold on to these. I hope you won't keep this kind of thing anymore. If my boyfriend sees them, he'll be jealous." He trembled faintly, staring at the scraps scattered on the ground, his eyes red. I turned and walked away, and found him crouching down to gather up every last piece from the ground. But I didn't look back. What's past is past, and it ought to be forgotten. It was only after I got back that I learned the truth. Over the years, Mel had used my name to siphon a great deal of money out of the Ashford family. The Ashfords had never once bothered to scrutinize her accounts. In a single night, she fell from heaven into the mud, forced to give back everything she'd taken and left with nothing at all. She'd grown used to a life of luxury and waste. Rich for so long, she found it nearly impossible now to live simply. But she wouldn't go out and work, sneering that the wages were too low, and little by little she didn't even have money for food. Even the old letters had been taken back by Theo. Theo showed no mercy for old ties. One time, Roman and I were out to eat, and through the pane of glass, I saw Mel watching me with hate-filled eyes. Before her gaze quickly slid to the food on our table, I wiped my mouth and left with Roman. The moment we were gone, Mel pounced on our leftovers like a starving wolf. Before long, a waiter came over, set a full meal in front of her, and said with a smile, "The guest from a moment ago ordered this for you. Eat slowly. We're hiring here, by the way. Might you be interested in looking into it?" Mel, gulping the food down, suddenly froze, and then burst into racking sobs. I never wanted to drive anyone to a dead end. I just never thought Theo would be so ruthless about it. I heard that Theo had left the monastery too, but because of all the outrageous things he'd done over the years, many in the clan felt he wasn't fit to be the heir, and he was stripped of his inheritance. Now he was just a nameless young master, often kept under watch at home. I knew for certain the assistant had told Roman that Theo had come looking for me, and that the 2 of us had photos together. Roman was a jealous man by nature, and never more so than with Theo. I went to soothe him of my own accord. "Even though we don't have any photos together, we'll take plenty from now on." He raised a brow and glanced at me. "Who says we don't? We have a photo together." I didn't know about that. Roman bent down and drew out a carefully sealed plastic bag from under the bed. He opened it, and inside, there really was a photograph, one that looked oddly familiar. Roman at 8 years old, not the least bit cold and dark the way he was now. Back then, he'd been kidnapped, a wound on his face, his round dark eyes fixed on the lens, so very cold, without any hunger to go on living. Beside him was a little girl with her hair in two braids, about the same age, her face full of terror, her eyes brimming with tears, staring at the lens in panic. This was the photo the kidnappers had sent to Roman's parents. When we were taken and the picture was snapped, he already knew they wouldn't care whether he lived or died, so he'd held no hope at all. He just never expected that Roman would go and beg them for that photograph and keep it carefully all these years. I was astonished. So he was that boy. I was different from Roman. He'd been kidnapped and no one paid to bring him home. Me, I'd been sold to the traffickers by my own biological father. I gently stroked the photo. It was the past I least wanted to speak of. Even after I escaped with Roman, I never brought it up again, and I never went back to that house. When I grew up, the very first thing I did was hand over to the police all the evidence I'd gathered over the years, and put my own father behind bars with my own hands. I'd assumed Roman surely wouldn't want to speak of it either, and yet he'd kept this photo, treasured it like something precious, and guarded it carefully for all these years. I threw myself into his arms. "So, you recognized me a long time ago?" He nodded. What a pity. A certain little girl once said she'd come find me, and then she disappeared without a trace, and went and found a pen pal with rotten character. Even when we finally met again, not only did she fail to recognize me, she was afraid of me. The more he said, the guiltier I felt, and I quickly buried my face against his chest, mumbling, "I'm sorry." Remembering the 50 million, I said, "You lost money on this deal." "How so?" "You only ever needed to put up 50 million to hire me for 1 year. Now look, you have to hand over everything you own to me, and that's a lot more than 50 million. He thought it over. When you put it that way, it really is a huge loss. My eyes went wide. I can say it's a loss. How dare you say it's a loss? I lunged up and gave his Adam's apple a light bite and felt it bob. Then make it up to me a little and it won't be a loss anymore. He scooped me up and headed for the bedroom. I said hurriedly, "I'm not going in there. If I go in there, I'll never survive this ordeal." His steps paused. He reached up to unbutton his shirt, raised a brow, and smiled faintly. Here works just as well. I always know exactly how to work him. Know that he'll give in to whatever I want. I meant to explain myself, but he'd already pressed me down onto the sofa, and in one deep kiss there was no distance at all left between us, right through to the depths of the night. I was so worn out, I couldn't move a single finger. Half dreaming, my fingertips suddenly felt something cool. I lifted my head and saw a glittering diamond ring on my ring finger. Roman, glued to me, refusing to let go, kissed my face lightly. "Wife. There, the proposal gift is given too. Giving me a title of my own isn't too much to ask, is it?" "It's not too much." I smiled and burrowed into his arms. Outside the window, the night sky was thick with glittering stars, and the city lights blazed. There had once been a time when every house glowed with light, and yet not one of those lights had ever been meant for me. 2 homeless children like us had now built ourselves a new home together, and its lights stay burning all night long. Thank you all for listening.